Like we never think like, let me get, this beer would win a gold medal for me.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
So like, nobody cares about your medals. Figure out who you are and give people something to connect to. And then do that really well. Make sure you're having something outside of the beer, that tells people, like, this is my happy place.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Step Into The Sandbox. Today's guest is Marco Leyte-Vidal. He's the owner of Unseen Creatures Brewing and Blending, which actually opened up here in Miami in early 2020. So he has an interesting story to tell about launching a brewery during a pandemic, as well as his background in being a lawyer and transitioning into starting a brewery. So we touch a little bit upon that journey and some of his influences in music and art. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. Special thanks to Maxwell Brothers Clothing Company, which actually is not a clothing store. It's a pizzeria and brew pub. So it's located all the way down here in Palmetto Bay. And we like to thank John Falco and the people behind it for letting us host the podcast here. We always like to start this off with an icebreaker question. Okay. So first one I like to start off with is just like, what'd you have for breakfast?
Okay. A banana, I think. Yes, a banana. Very much like this microphone. Today I'm just all about these very,
mini bananas or longer bananas. Yeah, I actually didn't have breakfast today. I just had like café con leche and that's it. So that was like breakfast until now this beer apparently. So
well, I'm trying to be healthy, so I'm working out now in the mornings.
Nice.
To counterbalance all the stress of everything, and so like I'm at 5:30 in the morning. It's like I got to eat something or I'm gonna vomit while I'm working out because of my stomach acid and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I drink a glass of water and a banana usually.
Feel you, yeah.
It's very exciting. I know this is exactly what you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. No. It's definitely get the juices flowing. Another one that I thought about that the other night, I'm like, an interesting thought was there's usually a lot of people wake up and the first thing they do is they might open their phone, or at least they get to their phone relatively early in the day.
Yeah.
So like, what are those first 3 apps that you open up when the second you grab your phone? Because clearly it takes up a lot of time, and it's like,
I was like, I never thought like somebody would ask me this, but I hate that you're asking me this because it's kind of makes me feel like really dumb.
It's crazy how.
But I always go to Instagram.
Yeah.
Like a loser.
But okay, so you go to Instagram, right? You spend whatever amount of time.
I made something up. I go to like.
But are there any other apps also?
App or something?
Because I feel like people have like a repertoire. It's like usually they cycle through basically a handful of apps. You have like tens and tens of apps.
Yeah.
Or some people have close to hundreds of apps and you only use like what's on the front screen.
I don't like clutter on the phone, so I try and keep them to a minimum. But I'll go to like I'll make sure nothing blew up. 'Cause I still have my day job too alongside the brewery.
Okay. So
I make sure nothing blew up at work. Mm-hmm. I'll check Instagram because it's like mindless, just kind of like.
Yep.
We're probably all addicted to it at this point.
Yeah.
and then I'll check brewery email too.
Okay.
It's just basically email and
Instagram.
Scroll through Instagram until I realize this is not the first thing I should be doing in the morning.
Yeah.
And I stop.
Yeah.
I force myself to because of fear of questions like this.
Yeah, it's almost undeniable that like the attachment to the phones. I forgot what study it was. It's like throughout most of the day you have your phone within arm's reach, like 90 to 99% of the time.
I got it on my fucking watch.
Yeah, that's one of the. I see the benefits of having a watch, but it's just like I haven't made that leap. But it just seems like devices are.
I justified this to myself like I don't have to have my phone. Mm-hmm. It's limited, right? So like if my wife needs to reach me. Or I can get email if I need to answer something. I can do
it from there.
I can do it if I need to, but I don't have the screen in my face.
True, it's a more limited interface. It makes sense.
Yeah,
I
put
agree
the
with
earpods in if I want, and I can I just this thing we are addicted to this.
Oh yeah,
I don't want to admit it.
I think it's just dependence because of the lack of structure there's been around it, right? Like we just got like access to all these things and information, and it's just like there is no guideline. There is no rule around it.
I also think it's like a little, I read something about it too, and I agree with it. that there's like an adrenaline hit when you see a like on something that you posted, or
Mhm.
like you see something that you like,
Yep.
and you scroll through these tiny little boxes, and it's like you're seeing a million things you like.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a pop of adrenaline every time.
Makes sense. Yep.
Um, and there's definitely. I mean, why do we spend all the time and effort we do on labels of beer? It's the same exact thing. Like when somebody sees it, you want them to go, oh, like something to snap, like
Yep.
hit.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing to us. Like they're in our heads.
Yeah.
Doing that to us.
It's
insane.
it's pretty wild. It's definitely a social experiment, and I think that we're just
dangerous.
starting to see the beginning effects of it. So it's probably another decade or two before.
I'm like worried to see what my kids are dealing with that.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm still pretty like. My wife will listen to this and shake her head no, but I'm still pretty old school when it comes to stuff like that. I prefer a pad and a pen over like writing notes in my phone, and but then you get clutter and stuff. So I'm trying to train myself to use a phone, but there I go, grabbing the phone again.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so,
and for me, I kind of like bounce between, like, I obviously like writing things out just to like disconnect from it and go analog, but there's the undeniable fact, like, there are things you're going to access from your phone or your laptop and devices.
yeah.
But like, going back to your point about you're a little bit more old school, maybe you can talk a little bit about your background and how you grew up. I don't know, are you originally from Miami, or what's your backstory so that people can know?
Yeah, I was born in Gainesville, Florida. My dad was in dental school there at the time, so I think I was like 2 when we left. But I always like to say that because I love Gainesville.
Yeah.
Grew up most of my life in Miami, a little stint in like Central Florida.
Yep.
Went to school in Gainesville and then came back to Miami. So I'm really just Miami my whole life. I like Miami. I don't necessarily know that I associate. I don't necessarily associate I have a weird relationship with where I grew up and lived.
Yeah.
Like I think you see it if you walk into the brewery. It's not like Miami. I had some of our partners that are like Miami, and they're like, "Can we put neon lights under here and do this and that?" And I'm like, "That's not who I am." You know. I'm not saying that Miami's all neon lights and everything, but
I get you. Cliches.
You know what I mean? Like it's a little bit of that. So, I don't know where I'm from Miami, but I don't know like. I don't know if it had to have shaped me in some way or form, but I don't know where.
Yeah, you don't know what amount of the pie it takes, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't know where anything else would come from because I've been here my whole life. But
yeah, so I feel like interfacing with media of other places, traveling, like those kinds of things always influence. So I think we'll get into that whole thing of like influences and how it translates to the brewery and all that kind of stuff. But
did I answer the last question?
It was just basically your backstory. Like I was gonna get into what maybe your family background.
I can do that. Yeah. So like my wife's parents, my parents are all Cuban. Came around the time a lot of people like me's parents came. They were either just about to be born like a year prior to Castro coming in, or parents came over and like had them here like right away. That was my mom. My dad's family did the whole Mexico thing and came over. And my dad's family was like super in Cuba was like super well known for a whole like military stuff and like all this. Anyways, apparently I learned this as I came back and started practicing law here. When I would get some of the older Cubans to come into my office and talk to me, like it's like, wow, this is pretty cool. And like my wife's grandfather was part of like the CIA group hunting down Che and all that stuff.
Wow.
Like like a really kind of vibrant Cuban counter-revolutionary history that's certainly alive and well inside of us.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I haven't actually sat down and written it down, but like I know that my wife's got great grandparents and I've got great grandparents from Spain, and some from Cuba. So it's like the very
family.
typical 35, 36-year-old Miami story, I would say, to a certain degree. But yeah, like I was saying, I went to Gainesville for school, and then I came back home. I went to law school at FIU, and started practicing law, started home brewing. Met my
Around
wife.
what time did you pick up home brewing?
I say it's probably like 11, 12 years now that I've been brewing. Yeah, it just started. I would just brew Sierra Nevada Pale Ale clones all day long. Very exciting stuff. We actually, like, side note, we bought a keg of Sierra Nevada for the brewery because I was like, yeah, I finally opened. I'm putting my influence on, and nobody drank it.
Oh my god!
Like my brewer ended up drinking the entire keg himself. It's like, you're welcome.
Yeah, that's funny.
But yeah, I don't know. I just started brewing, and then I started that blog that I was telling you about before we started talking. It was like, interviewing a bunch of brewers and stuff. Became friends with these guys and started sharing beer with people, and they would start saying, like, this is really good. Like, people who are pretty tough critics, because I've seen them be very tough critics. Yeah. Telling me this is really good stuff, and then it's just planted the seed in my head that I wanted to do this. So started shifting gears a little bit, and ended up with here we go, a year in.
That's awesome. So when do you? So obviously you were doing the home brewing thing, and it translated into the point where you're doing the blog, and then what was a switch that you're like, I'm gonna make my own brewery? Was there a year where you were like, this is where I think I'm gonna move forward with this idea?
Yeah, I think it was like, so all my life I've played music. I've taught myself in all the instruments I play and everything, and like even as like a middle school kid, like we had bands and stuff, and we didn't want to play covers. We wanted to write our own music. So even for like an early age, I always wanted to kind of like express something. I don't know. It's like I always want to tell a story. Like, cover bands are fun. There's nothing wrong with cover bands, but I just never wanted to be like a cover band. I wanted to like always have a perspective, even as a kid. I remember that. And like I always wanted to write lyrics, and I would get very offended when somebody would say, "Can I write the lyrics on this song?" I was like, "No, I'm the singer. When you're the singer, you can write the lyrics. I'm not going to sing your story." Anyway, so like through college we had bands and stuff, and then that just stopped when I went to law school. I got too busy. And I started home brewing. Like I said, I would brew Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, and then I started realizing, like, I'm in a cover band. And again, I'm enjoying drinking this beer. There's nothing wrong with it. It's practicing. I'm practicing it. I'm getting good at it. I'm enjoying it. Like, other people are enjoying it. But I never wanted to be that guy. I wanted to have my own thing to tell. So then I started like playing with that clone, and how do I want to make this beer my beer? And it turned into a beer that we serve at the brewery called Pursuance, which is our house IPA. It looks nothing and tastes nothing like Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, but it uses like similar hops, I guess. And then it just started like, once I realized, and I guess at that point the light went off in my head that like beer is the perfect medium for expression. Because you hit every sense with it. Like, every sense. Sound, smell, touch, taste. What's the other one? Sound, smell, touch, taste. What is it, though?
It's seeing, right? Like
seeing it.
The actual color. And
As I stare at the beer, I can't remember the last one.
It's all good.
Yeah. So I started, once I made that connection, then I got like really like, this is gonna be a way that I can express myself without like having the like the need to be in another relationship with 4 other dudes that are all moody and want to play a different chord than I want them to play or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's my thing. So I don't know. I started viewing it as like my way to express things, and that's what clicked. And then once I started doing that, I guess people started connecting to it more, and I started getting momentum. And I'm like, I could do this. So we started doing it.
So around what time? Like, was there like a range of, because like it's always hard to pinpoint like a specific year, because sometimes you're like 1 year you kind of get that idea in motion, and then it takes a year or two for you to actually
I think I brought it up to my wife like 4 or 5 years into brewing, which is not very long.
Okay.
But I think I brought it up to her, and she was really on the fence, and I was like, I'm not going to push this anymore. And then she started seeing like some of the feedback I would get, and like we like made a logo, and she's like, okay, I guess I can see this now. We did an event at Union. One of the first times we poured beer outside of like a festival. It was like our own event, and by the time like when I showed up, there was already like a line formed to the back of the bar, and I think that like that having that early on was like a huge momentum boost for both of us. Like, we got to do this. This is cool.
Yeah,
like, we're gonna be able to do it.
That's awesome.
But it's a lot harder than
Of course. And also I think one thing that I noted there was like, you obviously are making like this creative leap from something that's a little bit more structured, like the legal field, to something that's a little bit more unstructured, even though there's an industry around it, but like craft beer in terms of, there's a lot more art, I guess, in that sense of how you craft these products.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I take a lot from like legal thinking and training, and take it just in the way we approach creation at the brewery. Like, because like I was a litigator, so I was basically paid by people to tell a story and to craft it in a way that looked the best, and craft it in a way that like got other people to say,
yeah,
I agree with him or her or whatever, And now I'm a lobbyist, so now I do the same exact thing, maybe even to the 10th degree.
Yeah.
And so that's always kind of how I wanted to approach the beer too. I think my mind just goes to that. It's like, this is not just what's in a glass. People can get a beer anywhere. It's like, how do you create this whole environment and thing around that that gets people just as excited about what you're putting in the glass as you're excited about it. And it's like, it gave me like an outlet, but I take a lot of the stuff from my, what's probably a more linear life and put it into here.
Is there anything about the craft beer industry that you love or that you hate and you want to get off your chest?
There's a lot of stuff I love about it. The people, I miss like everybody so dearly. We were fortunate enough to get invited to a lot of really cool events by a lot of really cool breweries that I like admire and respect. And they're friends of mine, and because of that, I would get to go see them. Every month I'd see some of my friends at a festival or something, and I love that. There's a lot of camaraderie. I mean, we get people telling us how they brew their beers, and like, oh, hey, there's something in your beer that like could be better if you do this. Like, what other industries like that? Like Falco. Yeah. I mean, we're sitting in his place right now. Like, what other industry does a competitor say, yeah, come do an interview at my place. Come advertise yourself in my, place.
Yeah.
There is none. I mean, when we were opening too, like Luis from Wynwood sat down, looked at all of our books, tore them apart, put them back together. Falco was at my house till midnight several nights, just like drinking whiskey and helping me figure out how to get through the county or all that stuff. The people are amazing. I love the fact again that it's like it is somewhat like the Wild West right now, where you can do whatever you want, and people are doing crazy shit, and you're free to do that. I also hate that to a certain degree. I don't hate it. I hate that it's turned somewhat like it's just a gimmick at a certain extent. Like at a certain point, it becomes too gimmicky.
Yep.
You lose focus on things, but then I don't hate it. I have a love-hate with that idea.
Yeah.
Because who am I to say like you shouldn't do that?
I get you.
But it just makes it. The reason I hate it is because it makes people who don't want to just constantly hit like an extreme or throw a bunch of like fruity pebbles into their beer. It makes like people like me that don't do that, have to explain why we don't.
Okay, I get you.
Because there's enough people that do it, and that's what drives me nuts a little bit. Not the fact that they're doing it. Like, more power to you. Do it all you want. I never thought about that until I just said that.
Yeah.
So thank you for helping me articulate that.
Yeah, I think that it's always interesting when there's like an industry standard or a trend that like captures enough people to think that that's like the way things should be.
Yeah.
Whereas, you might have been doing this way before. There's no really correlation, but just as a consumer coming into it, they might think like, this is the way things are. Why aren't you doing it that way?
Yeah.
And that to me is always like, the market constantly changes. So like educating people is like, you just got to get better at it, or you got to find a way to keep adapting and making sure that you keep that that distinction.
Yeah. I mean, we have to educate people on our beer, right? Like some of our beer is a little more expensive. Like people just lump in all sour beer. It's just sour beer. And like the beer we're drinking now is kind of tart and everything. Mm-hmm. But we do sour beer, but they're barrel fermented sour beers. They could be a little more pricey. They sit in a barrel for a year and a half. They take up all its space in my brewery. They get tons of fruit addition and re-ferment it on the fruit.
Yep.
Then they re-ferment in the bottle, and it takes forever to get the beer out. And then it's like one little step can ruin the thing. And think how many IPAs could I have turned in the same amount of time it took me to put that bottle out, you know, like, oh.
Yep.
But like you know, there's so many, I guess what I'm trying to, I don't know, there's so many pros and cons to it, that it's a little frustrating for me because I don't do that stuff. And there's a sort of an expectation if you're a craft brewery, you're going to do that stuff now. But then I sit back and I go, like, that's just because I set a rule on my own for myself that I wasn't going to.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, why do I care?
Yeah.
I don't. I have a lot of friends that do it. And I drink them and I'm like, I look at them like, I remember, I'm not going to mention the brewery, but one of my buddies is like, hey, come here, try this. And I was out in another city. I was like, what is it? He's like, I really hate that I'm pouring you this. And he put like a bunch of like gummy fruits into a beer. He's like, I really hate it. And he goes, but it tastes so good. And I started drinking it. And I was like, you son of a bitch. Like, I hate that I want another one of these. You know? So then here I am saying I hate it, but I don't.
Yeah.
I just hate that I have to explain why I don't.
Yeah. No, it's constantly changing, and it's just an interesting thing to kind of see where the market goes, or like what, you know, our flavor profiles are just like kind of gone to these new extremes. Of like, we've never had these kind of flavors brewed in like a certain, you know, drink style. Like there's so much going on in the drinks industry. It's really, it's fascinating when you look at it that way.
It's awesome.
But it is I can see how it could be frustrating.
It's frustrating for me. Yeah, it's frustrating for me. I mean, like, we pick styles to brew. It's just, I brew what I like to drink. Mm-hmm. And it's not that I don't like the flavor of those, but I can't sit down and drink like pints of them.
Yep.
And that's the way I drink. Like, when people come over, or we used to do like bottle shares and stuff, people would just pour like 2 or 3 ounces, and I was just like, I don't like this. I want to enjoy a beer,
the whole beer,
and maybe another beer, and then be done. I never really liked the whole like give me 50 pours of something.
Yep.
And so like we brew styles that, like, we brew a lot of IPA, we brew lager, we brew farmhouse beer, like stuff that's been around for a long time, that it lends itself to drinkability.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have to chase trends or feel like pressure to chase trends. If I wanted to do that, I would have never opened this, because like I said in the beginning, I opened this to express myself. And I'm not going to just chase something else I'm going to do me.
Yeah. Like, so I think on that note, getting into the influences of the style of beers that you brew, and then we can get into the inception of the brand.
Yeah.
You know, like what came up with the name,
the
look and feel and all that stuff. But like really starting, like, you know, you talk about music as your background, part of your background. Obviously, from looking at the labels, there has to be some art and storytelling background that you have influences from. Are there any examples that you could give us?
Yeah. I mean, like, I guess, how do I answer this question? There's certainly breweries that are inspirational. I would say like early on, Sierra Nevada, just because everything they did was like perfect. Firestone Walker, everything they do was perfect. For a farmhouse beer, like Cantillon, Jester King, after my first sort of into American farmhouse beer, like Black Project and Side Project, and some of these other breweries. But you kind of hit something that a lot of people don't. But I never really go into a beer thinking about another brewery, ever.
Yeah.
Like, we may say like, hey, I had this beer from this brewery, or that beer seems really cool, and one day, and be like, you know, we might come up with our own version of something because we like the flavor profile or the mouthfeel or something. But I never like sit there and go, I want to be just like Other Half, or I want to be just like, Lincoln's down the street from us, or whatever. You know, it's more like I'm really more inspired by like music, probably more than anybody. Miles Davis.
Okay.
And his approach to creation. One of the biggest things I learned from him that I think you'll see, and like I think this is why I chose to bring this beer, kind of shows that, is, you know, like when you listen to Miles's music, like he was never like the fastest trumpet player. He was never like the showiest trumpet player. I mean, he was the showiest like dresser and drove those nice cars and everything. Mm-hmm. What I mean is, like, he was never just trying to show you how good he was. It was all about like what fit in the right places.
Okay. And
there was times where it's like he just doesn't play until like, you know, like seconds go by, and then here comes Miles, and it's just one note again. And there's like, to me, there was so much beauty in that. It hit me because, you know, one of the other guys I love is John Coltrane. It's sort of for the opposite reason. You know, I came up with this thing in my head, is like, make the silence count.
Okay.
And so like little, like, I don't know, I just learned a lot of lessons from jazz musicians, and then we apply that to our beer.
Yep.
Like Coltrane, like I said, the opposite end of the spectrum. Coltrane was like, he's your standard sort of I say standard. He's one of the greatest musicians to ever live, but he played like a more straightforward jazz, and all of a sudden he started playing this crazy off the wall spiritual free jazz, and rooms would go packed, and halfway through the set, half the people are walking out like, I can't take this anymore because there's 50 freaking crazy notes out of nowhere, and he's all over the place. But it was like him reaching out to God and telling the story, and he didn't care that people were leaving. Like he kept doing exactly that and more. And I love that. Yeah. So when I think to myself, could I do this beer or do it this way to make some money to like keep the room full? Yeah. But then I always go back to like, this is the greatest saxophone player to ever live, and he had people walking out of his show and didn't care. Yeah. So I'm going to keep doing what like...
Yeah, focus on you.
Yeah. So like that like a huge inspiration of how we do our beer. Like stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think an interesting note, especially when we talk to clients when it comes to branding, is there's a certain point where you either stand for something or, you stand for nothing at all.
Everything.
And it's, so you have, if you really want to stake, a flag in the ground and really distinguish your brand, there is going to be a point where you're not for everyone, and you're going to turn some people away, and you have to be willing for people to walk out on your show because they don't think that it's, their taste, and that's fine. I think that there's if we've seen there's so much nuance and like subcategories of things and people that you can go after, that it's not, I don't think that it's all or nothing, I think that you can find your niche and you can find your audience, and you just keep doing what you do.
And for me, there's no fun in chasing other people. Like I don't want to. What do you get? What do you get when you get there?
Yep.
You're like, okay, so let's say right now one of the top IPA people in the world, let's say, is Other Half. So I'm going to model myself after Other Half. I'm going to chase Other Half. I'm going to do what Other Half does. They put out this beer. I'm going to do something really similar and call it something different. But it's like it's always guided to. I'm going to change my labels to look like Other Half because they're so cool. They are really cool. Mm-hmm. But. And then I get there, and what am I? I'm Other Half 2.0. I'm never Other Half. Ever. Yeah. I'm Other Half 2.0. Like, I didn't start this to be somebody's 2.0. Mm-hmm. Like, this is just us. It's me. It's me. And that's the difficult part, is a little bit sometimes, because, like, sometimes it's a little, like, sometimes the names of the beers or whatever hit a little close to home. Okay. I've heard it. My wife's like, why do you name it that? And I was like, because it's real. It's like what I'm going through. Yeah. But what's the purpose if you're not doing that? Yeah. And then what do people grab onto? Oh, there's another brewery that's doing the exact same thing as the 15 other breweries doing it within a 40-mile radius. I don't care if people hate some of my beer.
Yeah, and I think that that's the right approach to take. It's what distinguishes you. And I think obviously most people might not watch the video side of it, but the label has this really intricate, detailed like artwork. I don't know how to explain the direction, or like if there's a certain artist that you kind of modeled after, but like what were the inspirations behind? I can tell that there's a lot of like symbolism behind certain animals. You use like the owl a lot, the bear. Yeah, I've seen the fox before and stuff. Moose. Like it seems. I guess the only way that I kind of get the kind of direction you're going for has a lot to do with like the deep woods, like wilderness, and then it's also layered with a little bit of like a dark seriousness, maybe like a little bit of melancholy. That's just like from a distance. I don't know if those are like influences that came in through the art, or like what's the
like, as a kid I loved Batman. Like I hated Superman. I could never get into Superman. It was too bright. Yeah. I don't know. That's weird for a kid, right? Like be 7 years old and be like, this guy's too happy. That's weird. Yeah. But like I was a Batman guy. I liked Wolverine. I liked Gambit. Yep. I loved Spawn. Yep. I loved all the fucked up people. Yeah. I don't know why. Yeah. Like I'm not like that. I was always very cheery and everything, but like for some reason I connect with these characters always, and it kind of shines through. Like I think like there's. I mean, you look at comedians, and comedians talk about this all the time. They're making us laugh, but there's always like a subtle darkness to them. Yeah. And that's why they make us laugh, because they can connect to you, because they know what you're thinking. Like, they know how you're feeling, and they're the only ones like willing to think about it enough to figure out how to make it funny.
Yeah. I think Dave Chappelle does a great job of that.
Yeah, Chappelle, Greg Giraldo, he's no longer around, but like he was incredible at that. Yeah, I mean, all the greats. Like, there's always an underpinning of like, there's something. I'm talking about myself when I make these messed up jokes a little bit, but I'm gonna say it in a way where it's like, you can feel free to laugh at yourself through it.
Yeah.
Like, to act like we're perfect. I think that's what the problem was with Superman. I'm happy we did this interview. Right. I'm connecting the dots. I think that's my problem with Superman. Nobody's ever great all the time. Yeah. Like, nobody looks great all the time and runs into a telephone booth and comes out, his hair's perfect, and there's a fucking curly Q in the middle of his forehead. Like, nobody's like that. Except for you. You look pretty good all the time.
Have you watched The Boys on Amazon Prime?
No, like, everyone's telling me to watch it.
Yeah, I think you'll like it just because of that kind of narrative where it's like, they're like the anti-heroes. They're heroes, but they're really...
Yeah. Like, I still read comics, but I read, like, Image comics, because it's always, like, that same sort of thing. Yeah. Like, there's, like, anti-heroes. Yeah. They're not superheroes. I bought some comics the other day to try and get back into the superhero thing or try and get into it, and I just couldn't. I read them, and I was like, not buying anymore. I mean, this looks good. Yeah. The author's great. I just can't connect to it.
Yep. I get you.
It's just fake.
Yeah.
You can tell it's fake, and like, that's why I've never like gotten into the Marvel universe. I don't know why I'm talking about Marvel so much. Yeah. The point is, like, I don't know. I think the darkness comes in because when I go into this, I sort of like allow myself to be real about it, and I think if most people are real about things, there's always going to be a little bit of that. Maybe we go a little further, but we opened 2.5 months before COVID started. And like, we still are dealing with a lot of stuff and stress, and like both my wife and I still have our regular jobs on top of this, so it's like late hours to get this stuff done. Yep. And so like that's caused like a lot of like. Yep. I was telling you guys before we started, like, a major hypochondriac. I was never really like that. Yeah. Like, that was all within the last year or two. I think, like, my doctor's basically just telling me, like, you're just too stressed at all times. And it's just your body's, like, reaction to it, but I can't do anything about it. I know it's... Yeah. Anyway, so that's why some of these things, like, breaking through is sort of tongue-in-cheek. It's like breaking through 2020 was our first, IPA of the 2021, and it's got this owl, like our owl breaking through a skull. Yeah. And it's still kind of tied in. Yep. If you notice, like, the ropes are still kind of around it. So, like, we're breaking through 2020, but it's 2020 2.0. Like, nothing's really changed. Yeah, not yet. I feel like for me, I almost like didn't realize, or I almost like let it set in that it was 2021 like halfway through January. Like literally like a week ago. It feels like April. Yeah. It feels, I think last year kind of threw everyone's like time frame and like understanding of time a little bit off, because just because it threw off the routines. I think that there's a certain level of like habit and routine that we like latching onto, and then like when that changes, like it kind of throws off your entire flow. It throws off your whole day or week, like the whole way you operate. So I think now it's us recalibrating moving forward, seeing like what that new normal is and how we adapt to it. But for sure, habits have had to adjust. Everything's had to change. I mean, like, I don't think we'll ever go back to the same daily life. Yeah, it'll be different. It's always going to be different, and it's always going to be different. Like, there's always going to be people like people are always going to have it in the back of their head that, like, let's say a year from now or 2 years from now, let's say COVID goes away tomorrow. It's done. There's always going to be in the back of like people who lived through this for a year and a half, like in the back of our head, like that happened. Like that could happen again. Exactly. Yeah. And I don't want to be one of the first ones that was getting intubated when they didn't need to be intubated and died for no reason. Yep. Like, that's always going to go through people's heads now. And so like that's going to change the way this place operates for forever, the way our brewery operates. We never wanted to distribute a beer in our life, and now we distribute way more than I want to. Yep. And it's just because people, I don't blame them. Again, I told you who I am. I don't go a lot of places. We do our best job to stay safe. I feel good in our brewery. Like, we're spaced out, and like we've we've been very conservative about the way we come back and like bring people in, but I don't blame people if they want to take beer to go,
Yep.
instead of stick around. And the unfortunate thing is like our model was built for people to sit at our brewery,
Yeah.
so it's been a quick shift, but a shift in like not that we weren't ever ready for.
Yeah. I do think that there will be, whenever there's standards that social distancing isn't needed as much, or we feel like things have gotten to a point where that's okay, like there's going to be a wave of people craving and wanting that again, because then that's going to be new again,
Yeah.
because you kind of, everyone's kind of like adopted. I feel like I've gotten a little bit more reclusive because
Yeah.
of this in a way, right?
Oh, me
You're like,
too.
well, I can't go out, so then I'm gonna stay in and I'm gonna
Yeah.
save money and I'm gonna not
Yeah.
do things, and so you build that habit. And now when like, hey, it's safe to come out,
Yeah.
whatever that is, like,
Do I want to?
do you want to, or what's that process gonna be like? But I do think there's gonna be a gradual
Yeah.
shift of people that
Yeah.
are gonna at some point you're like, oh, this is not too bad, or I found a medium now.
Yeah.
I know.
That's a good point though. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we're spending way too much time in our house. We got a 5-year-old and 2-year-old,
Mhm.
and like during the middle of summer, we can't go outside. It's too hot. It's
Yeah.
just like, and so like we're stuck in the house all day.
Yeah.
So we're putting in a pool. I tore up my side yard and put a pizza oven. So that's why I come here and steal pizza dough all the time. And I'm too lazy to do it myself. But inside the house, like we're spending a lot of time in here now. So like there was a bunch of stuff that we always thought like let's get a couch here or do this here, and we just never wanted to spend the money or time on it. But now our house is like so comfy because it's like we did the stuff we want because we're here all day.
Yep.
Let's be comfortable here.
Yep.
So I mean, you're probably right. I mean, there's like people are going to settle in. Like now, I've got raised beds all over my backyard. We're growing a bunch of food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there might be like the whole thing of it might not happen. It might be more of like going back to people going over each other's houses instead of meeting in these social gathering spots, or having a mix of that. So I think that that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But before we jump, because we're definitely going to talk a little bit more about like the lessons learned from last year specifically, but about the artwork, like,
Yeah.
I always like touching upon the collaboration side of it. It's like,
Yeah.
Are there like dedicated artists that you
There's
work
one guy.
with? One guy only.
One guy.
Got it.
Yeah, and he's in Singapore.
Cool.
I scrolled through Instagram and saw a piece of his work, and I was like, this is the guy I want to work with.
Yeah.
And he said yes. And what's incredible is like, he speaks well enough English that we obviously can communicate and get stuff done. This image, he actually drew it with me in mind, like without me even thinking about it. And I was like, that's exactly what I was thinking about for the next concept.
Wow.
And like he posted on Instagram because he told me I was like seeing like if you'd say something, and like within minutes I was like, I'm buying that for the can. That's exactly what I was thinking about. And he's like, I drew this for you. Like,
Wow.
so we've kind of come in sync,
That's cool.
But it was like that from day one almost. Like I would tell him, this is my concept, this is my idea. I want this here, and there's only been like 1 or 2 pieces that we just kind of scrapped the idea because we couldn't come to terms on how it should look.
Yep.
Everything else has been like first draft. He just gets it.
Wow.
So it's been awesome. I mean, Artifact's completely done for us out of my head. The other beer over there, A Guiding Force, is completely done by a concept I sent him. And like I said, this one he drew with us in mind. But like Artifact, I was telling you, it's like a time. Artifact's like an object that tells a story of a time and a place. It's like a terroir type of thing for wine.
Mm-hmm.
So we put the totem pole, which is kind of symbolic of like ancestral stuff and everything. And so we got our owl on the top. The moose right underneath it was my dog that had recently kind of died,
Okay.
and his name was Moose.
Got it.
So I put a moose on the totem pole. So I'm telling you, like it's like stuff that's like super close to me
Yeah.
is what you see on these things. So that's our house beer, and it's like he's always going to be there.
Yeah.
And he got it. Like that was like draft 1.
Wow.
And I was just like, yeah, color it and send it to me.
It's awesome. Yeah.
We get each other. I don't know. I'm really lucky. I'm really lucky.
Cool.
And like, there is challenges. Like, it's nice to have like a guy here in Miami that if I need to, or I say guy, but interchangeable. I know today.
Yes.
I'm very clear about that.
Of course.
A person here in Miami that like, if you need something in a pinch, you just call them and like, it's just quick, or you can run over to their office and be like, hey, can you just draw this up real quick for me or whatever.
Yep.
I don't have that. Sometimes it takes a little bit back and forth. And then like if I need to make an edit, the hours are different. It's all through WhatsApp and then all this stuff. But I mean, like God rest his, like, God thank you for him. I was going to say something completely different, but God thank you for him. I was looking at Moose. God rest his soul. Thank you for our artist, because
That's awesome, man.
he's just awesome. We're so lucky to have found him. Like,
Cool, man.
you better listen to this.
Shifting gears back to, the lessons learned. 2020 has like its own chapter, I guess, in life. But maybe since you started the brewery till last year, what are some of the lessons that you've learned that you wish you could have told yourself at the beginning?
I wish I would have listened to my friends that said go bigger from the start.
Mm-hmm.
We started very small, and the purpose was to like feed a tasting room and force the attendants in the tasting room to make us grow. I'd heard too many stories about people like overextending themselves, taking out too much debt, and sinking because they couldn't pay debt. So we wanted to stay tight and small and tasting room focused. Obviously, hindsight's 2020.
Yep.
When you're canning beer, you make nothing on the beer. So unless you're in volume, and I never get volume. That's been the biggest challenge for us. Is like people are buying the cans. I can and distributing the cans. I can distribute the cans. People want them places, but I make no money. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like it's a very little amount.
Yeah.
You got to make your money on volume at that point, and we don't have volume. So I wish we would have listened. Some of them who said, you need a bigger system, you need a couple more tanks. But again, that's like, if COVID never happened, I would have been saying we did the perfect thing.
I get you. Yeah.
Because
Yeah. I mean, those are the factors that you cannot account for, and I think if it's still founded in sound tactics and kind of strategies based on what you saw in the market, you can't really go back on it, and you're still afloat, so you're still good enough to be able to adapt through it.
Thank God people have connected to our brand, I think.
Yeah.
Right when we opened, like all these articles, like right as we were opening, all these articles come out of these publications where like magazines were basically saying the perfect go forward model, and they would write this thing, and it was us. And so like I'd send it to my wife, I'm like, look, we hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
And then COVID hits, and we're like, the nail just went right through our foot. It happened to me the other day.
Yeah.
It sucks. Nail in the foot. Yeah, that sucked. And it was funny because like we've seen Tripping Animals just blow up this year. And they're super talented guys, super smart guys. Their branding is, again, it's like them. You know it's them when you see it. But before I opened, like Ignacio and I were talking, he's like, in his voice, bro,
Yeah.
He's like, I wish I would have done something smaller like you. It's more manageable. A tasting room, that's where the margins are at. We don't have to be so stressed about like produce.
Yeah.
And COVID hits, and I was like, you still wish? He's like, no, we're good now. Thank God. Like we were a little bit more ready for this.
Yeah.
Those guys are killing it. But
Yeah.
like, thankfully, like they, his sort of anxiety about having too much for a tasting room model played into his favor now, which is great.
Yeah. I guess it's being adaptable, right? To be able to like move forward and be able to kind of like switch gears or at least adapt to the situation.
Yeah, I'm proud of ourselves for that. I mean, we don't have this. We don't have our employees still and everything. Like we've taken major hits, but yeah, like I am proud of us for like having to make some tough decisions and to keep the brewery alive, and hopefully, whether it's 21 or 22 or whatever, we can get back to rehiring and keeping our staff up and taking some of the responsibility off of my wife and I.
Yeah.
It'd be great.
Yeah. Are there any exciting plans that you have for this year or any milestones you're looking forward to?
We're looking at our own canning line, which will be huge. Cut a lot of cost off of our production, of our packaging. I want to get more tanks. Like, we have demand for the beer, and I want to meet it. We're going to play a little bit more, within our sort of philosophy that we live in with our beer styles. We just released a beer last weekend that like people loved, and it flew. That was like a blend of a 2-year-old sour beer with an IPA, and it was like hyper fruited.
Nice.
And people like destroyed the keg. It was gone like that.
Good.
So we're gonna do more stuff. Like we're gonna start thinking about, we're brewing and blending. So how do we make that blending work more for us? Yeah, I'm trying to create the space again, like you were saying, like disconnecting. I'm trying to like look at this less.
Mm-hmm.
But every time I see that weekly summary and it goes, you were down 7% or whatever, I'm like, yes. like I want to give myself room to think again.
Yeah.
Which we haven't had because it's just been like COVID. What the hell are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
Let's do that, and that means I'm sitting at the brewery for 9 hours a day by myself trying to sell $100 worth of cans.
Yep.
That we don't have. Like,
Yeah.
I'm throwing like, get those bottles. I'm using my home brewing bottling gun to bottle beer.
Yeah.
Like however I can get beer into a package.
Yeah.
To now, like we're finally settling into another rhythm again. We got like great staff that takes care of stuff. But I'm still trying to figure out how to create some space to be creative again. And I think 21, like I'm really focusing on that.
I guess we already touched upon some of it, but are there any tips you would have for anyone aspiring to get into this industry?
Yeah. Make sure you want it.
Yeah.
Like it's really tough.
Mm-hmm.
I get people sending me like business plans and stuff all the time. And this is no longer open a brewery and people say yay and they go drink. The first question I always ask people back is, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
And they're, well, I'm a home brewer and this and that. It's like, no. Like nobody cares about that.
Yep.
Like nobody cares about that.
Yep.
Like, who are you? That's something I learned, like, not necessarily learn it, but I watch Falco, and I've learned a lot from Falco. I'm not saying I haven't learned a lot from Falco, but this we sort of always saw eye to eye on. I think we connected about this.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were always super passionate about this is like what this place is.
Yep.
And we're gonna live and die by that. Falco's always been that. If you don't do that, you're dead from day one. So like if you're gonna jump into this, figure out who you are. Like what sets you apart. Not that you won 30 medals at homebrewing competitions. Nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't enter a homebrewing competition. I don't care about competitions. I don't even brew beer to style.
Mm-hmm.
Like we make up names for stuff. We're like, oh, dark lager. Like,
Okay.
what the hell is that? We go in and we say, this is the flavor profile, or this is the thing I'm trying to achieve. Put something together. We put India Pale Ale on it because it's a hoppy beer and whatever. But those are IPA. But like we never think like, let me this beer would win a gold medal for me.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
So like, nobody cares about your medals. Figure out who you are and give people something to connect to. And then do that really well. Make sure you're having something outside of the beer, that tells people, like, this is my happy place.
Yep.
Like Lincoln's.
Are there any kind of areas that you're exploring outside of the brewery, whether it's just personal, like as a hobby, or maybe a potential new project that you're
Always.
looking at?
Always.
Yeah.
I want to get back into music again.
Okay.
I've started to like do little ambient music on a piano.
Nice.
And I actually don't hate it. I usually hate everything I do. It actually sounds really cool. I don't know. My big passions are like my kids. So figuring out how to spend as much time with them as possible. Like music. So I collect records.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like, if I have time that's not dedicated to something with the brewery, I'm usually listening to or finding a record that I want.
Nice.
And then growing food. Like I'm trying to become as much of a hippie as I can, as a libertarian can be. If that makes any sense, Like
Yeah.
I'm growing food. I'm not buying water bottles. If I do, they're glass, and I reuse them.
Yeah.
Several times, and I recycle them now.
That's awesome.
I'm trying to become more conscious about things.
I think one of the biggest forces that has like filled a gap during the pandemic has been nostalgia, and obviously that's different for different people, but
Yeah.
I've seen just like people going back to things that they did when they were
Comfort.
younger. Yeah, that comfort that they were kind of like, since things are thrown out, like what can I latch on to that
Yeah.
I find comforting. So yeah, like collectibles for me, I definitely started looking into like comics and cards and those kinds of things.
Yeah. My wife wants to
Gaming,
kill me sometimes because it's like another record shows up at the house. She's like, and it's like, it's sort of, again, it's going back to the adrenaline hit. Like, I really want this on vinyl because it's going to sound so much better than on my iPhone.
Yeah.
And I found it. It was 10 or $15. Some guy didn't know what he had. Or whatever. Maybe they did and it was just worth $10, but I really wanted it.
Yep.
So I buy it, and that little pop of pressing buy, and then that's one. And then the second one is when it's on the doorstep. The third one is when I clean it, and it looks shiny with no scratches. And the fourth one is when I play it, and there's no groove damage, and I can hear it. And I can hear, like, the drummer saying something to the bass player. And it's like, yeah, that's like my Zen zone.
Nice.
And I've just been building on that. My wife's going to kill me. But,
yeah.
Hey.
That's awesome.
I'm going to die happy.
Yeah.
When she kills me, I'm going to die happy. And I'm going to put in my will, bury me with all these records that you killed me for. Yeah.
I guess that pretty much wraps it up. I don't know if there's anything else, like, anything that you've been listening to maybe you want to throw out there for people to listen to, or books you've been reading or shows you've been watching.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. A lot of great new jazz music and a lot of great new psychedelic rock music that people should check out. Mm-hmm. Like King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Okay.
You never heard of them?
No.
Check them out. They're so prolific. Like them and the OCs, two of my favorite bands in the world. But King Gizzard releases like multiple albums a year. They're another inspiration of mine. I was going to say that earlier and I forgot to, because like they are just on the constant pursuit of what sound is next for them. And it's always, you can always tell it's them, but it's completely different. They'll go like a jazz rock album type of thing into like a thrash metal from one album to the next.
Wow.
But it's them. That's kind of what we want. Like, so them, there's a bunch of new jazz guys out there, like James Brandon Lewis. Check him out. Seriously. I'm trying to read more. I don't have time. I wish I did.
Yeah. I try. I kind of like pick it up a couple times a week. I try and set aside like 15 minutes a day, but sometimes it's better to just do it in a sitting and whenever you're feeling in that flow. So I just kind of go with the flow.
That's what it is. Usually when I get in the flow, my son's like begging me to play Nintendo with him, and then I end up having to like kill the flow.
Yeah. So where can people follow you at? Whether it's the brewery.
Unseen Creatures. Everything is. I think it's all Unseen Creatures. I hope.
Yeah.
That's what I got yelled at about by my manager when we first started, Alex. He's like, your social media, like, yeah, the pictures are kind of cool, but like, you're all over the place. You don't know what the hell you're doing. I was like, yeah, I don't. Duh. That's obvious. So he changed all the handles to say Unseen Creatures. It's like, why is it Unseen Creatures Brew? It's like, yeah, I don't know why it is. Why did I do that?
Yeah.
It makes no sense. But Unseen Creatures, that's a long explanation for where you can follow me.
Cool. No, that's it. That's it for me, man. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. You guys are killing it with this.
Appreciate it.
Like, this is fun.
Yeah.
And, I asked to be on this. So, let's make that clear. I was not sought after. I was seeking. Like, I liked what you were doing.
I hadn't even thought about it because I try and pick from different, areas and different industries so that we can keep it. But I definitely had you on my radar. I definitely have Ignacio on my radar. Yeah. So I think all the, people that are doing really cool stuff down here, I think are worth bringing on.
Thank you. Yeah. You're doing cool stuff, and that's why I wanted to be a part of it.
I appreciate it.
So now I'm in the history books. What number am I?
I think this would be 12.
12? I'm not even in the top 10?
Yeah.
First 10? I'm not in the first 10?
I think it's like 12. I think we're at 12.
Who's before me? Falco?
Falco's right before you.
Okay. It better be cool.
Aziz, which is like, he does like 3D renderings for architecture.
That's pretty cool. That's much cooler than me. I don't mean to extend you, but I have a question now.
Go for it.
Yeah. I mean, you're more in touch with it than I am because I'm so buried into my own thing. But like Miami's really like there's a lot of really creative, cool people coming around. Like, it's changing, right?
Yeah, I think it's been changing. The issue is that there's never like a central place to go. Like, where are all the cool people doing things? You have to kind of like find these little pockets. Whether you're going to like these open mics or you're going to these little events that are hosted. So there's like a lot of different little pockets, but there's just you got to find it. But yes, I agree. There's from an arts and culture scene, from a food and beverage scene.
Yeah.
Like there's just
Like
a lot of stuff.
Wynwood's getting destroyed, right? Like it's becoming not Wynwood.
Yeah, no,
right?
I think it's becoming a brick wall with painted walls.
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
sense
yeah.
like it's just big boxes and a lot of like high fashion,
Yeah, it's too
high-end
expensive for
retails.
people.
No, once the real estate boom happened there and people just kept buying out for exorbitant prices, like I think that you start losing a little bit of it. The only thing is that it was built on the arts, so artists will always get paid there. So like there'll be some culture and art in there, but it's gonna be amongst the big ones, amongst like the big.
Where do you
box.
think? Like I think our area, like where Falco and I are.
I think coming out west and other, I've even heard, and I haven't been hanging out a lot in Homestead, but there's like a lot of places that now, since there's hubs that are untapped where people, it's more residential, but there's opportunities to obviously bring entertainment and like, new things to do. Yeah. That you don't always
People
have to go to
drive
the city. Yeah.
45 minutes an hour to get somewhere.
Exactly. So
It's
I think
awesome.
that that's going to be the next wave of Miami. It's like finding those pockets that aren't as popular, and they're going to become little hubs. Like even Hialeah has a little sector where Branded is, and so like that could be built into something as well. All right, appreciate it, man. Thank you.